Good evening. Hello there to all of you who've tuned in, and welcome to our first 2026 live stream. We took January off mostly because we we needed to recover. The holidays were
And we had a
intense.
terrible cold.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Okay, so we had this huge problem where everyone in my family got ill, and then I was the only one who was well. Which is almost worse because, like, if you're sick, you get to lie down and other people take care of you. But for some reason, I was the only one who didn't catch the cold. So I had to take care of everyone.
Yeah, you
And
were like running around the house and being like, "Oh, what do you want? What do you want?"
well, thank you for noticing, darling. Thank you. Anyway, so let's get started with tonight. The first thing on our agenda is the show's theme for the year.
What's an agenda?
Agenda is like it's a fancy grown-up word that means the stuff you have to do in a meeting, like in order.
Oh, so like an agenda is stuff you have to do
Yeah, but
in
like
chronological order.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I used
Hey,
a big word.
well done.
I made water spill on my cup.
Well, at least it was just water and it won't ruin the rug.
Poor teddy bear.
Yes, so every year for the show, I pick a loose theme. It isn't like anything that I strictly follow as to a schedule, but it just is kind of fun for me to have something that I generally do. Like in the past, I did Leicestershire authors. So authors who are from the local area where we live, because I wanted to learn more about this beautiful part of England that is horribly overlooked. I think to the rest of the world, people think Britain is just London, and then they have no idea what exists elsewhere in the country.
Poor Shep Shed.
Well, yeah,
I
that's
don't know why I came up with Shep Shed.
because it's a village
It's a,
nearby and it's fun to
it's a
say.
funny name.
Anyway,
Oh,
so
and Bunny.
yeah, Bunny. Oh, yeah, there's a very cute village called Bunny in Nottinghamshire,
There's a
which
yarn festival thingy that
strongly
happens.
recommend it. Anyway, so I've done different themes. Last year, the theme that I picked was independent authors. And I didn't say this explicitly, but I mainly picked books that I felt would appeal to boys because a problem that we've had in recent years is that boys have really fallen behind in reading. We've had no problem getting girls to read, but boys are slipping behind in both their interest and in their skill in reading. And so I went out of my way to find independent authors like, say, Ben Dixon, who's been on the show several times. He had a really great book called Vengeance and Honor. And then there was a really wild and interesting one by an author called Dave Cullen, who wrote this amazing kind of mashup of like, it was like science fiction, but it was also like religious and philosophical. It was not the kind of thing I would usually read, but I really enjoyed it. So I think what I'll do maybe is put up a list of all the books I recommended last year. And this year's theme is, drumroll please.
Wait, hold on. Should we get the drum out?
No, we don't need to get the drum out.
Okay.
That was gonna ready. Da-da-da-da-da-da. Shakespeare.
Yay!
So I got this idea because I had done my episode the other week. I was very disappointed with the latest abomination of Star Trek. Oh, how this franchise has fallen. And it just
Poor
brought me
Mummy.
back to how much Star Trek meant to me as a kid. And I'm really not joking when I've said in these videos that Star Trek mainly introduced me to Shakespeare, but it also frequently references other great works of literature. And I cannot overstate how much Star Trek made me want to be a better person. It inspired me to read books that maybe I wouldn't have given a chance because it's too grown up or it's boring or it's old fashioned, things like that. So, what I got the idea for is not just Shakespeare, but the things that made me love Shakespeare. So, you're going to be getting more Star Trek since clearly you guys like that. But I also want to dive into some of the really, really fun 90s teen comedy movies. Well, some of them were more dramatic than comedy, but I don't know if you guys remember, like back in the 90s, there was this whole spate of movies based on Shakespeare and some based on Jane Austen. But I want to take a look at those and just start a conversation about like what got us interested in Shakespeare and then how can we use these things to get kids interested in Shakespeare. Like Chloe, for her own part, she can tell you. So your very first exposure to Shakespeare was when you were just 7, right? And that was right after we'd moved here.
So basically, there was this Shakespeare play group. I think I forget its name, but
The local theater
yeah,
company.
they were putting on Taming of a Shrew. My mum was playing in it, and
Well,
well,
I was in the
yeah,
background. I was
you
recruited
were
to
in
be a
the
warm body on
background.
stage. I didn't have any
You were in
lines.
the background with your cast iron skillet banging it for the pots and pans song.
Okay.
Remember that one?
Well, yeah, they
You
had
were like,
that's anyway. They wanted to recruit some warm bodies to fill out the stage and the crowd scenes, and since we were new in the village, Chloe and I volunteered, and you ended up really enjoying that. And then the director of the theater company gave you,
these. I have way more.
yeah, they're children's editions of Shakespeare.
They're like
If you are a teacher or a parent or a kid, these are great. They
they're
are
by Matthew Ross.
Andrew Matthews and Tony Ross.
Oh,
We'll drop a link to these in the show notes for this, but it's a whole set of they're prose. They're not done in verse, but
like
yeah. Which one's your favorite? Explain why.
hmm. I'm starting to sound like an old
Oh,
refrigerator now.
okay.
What?
That's right. Well, why
What?
you make
What?
your mind?
What?
Oh my gosh. So
What?
gosh darn it. I love gargoyles. Oh
What?
my gosh.
What are
Okay.
gargoyles?
Oh, it's a TV show from the 90s. Okay, you know what?
Are they these little ants that run around who call themselves
No. No, no,
gargoyles?
no. Oh my gosh. I'm so looking forward to introducing you to this. So, gargoyles I actually had on my list of things that I want to talk about because you're right. They bring in quite a lot of Shakespeare.
Are they
Some of the
like the
characters.
Smurfs?
No, it's so much better than that. Yeah, no, definitely. Oh, and then he says he's also he or she. I have not met gosh darn it before. Anyway.
Gosh
Um,
darn it.
and
That's
yes,
an amazing name.
and Bazemore, 10 Things I Hate About You. She's the man. Exactly the sort of thing that I plan to talk about. But yes, Gargoyles is amazing. I absolutely love that show. I've seen every episode more times than I should admit on the internet. Anyway, tell us about your favorite one of those.
Can I just say, there's a song called 10 Things I Hate About You, and it's really good.
Yeah.
But it's got one naughty word in it, so beware.
Oh gosh.
Just search up clean.
Our ears will be set on fire if there's a
Yes.
naughty word in a song.
But this show is non-verbal toxicating.
Okay, which one of those is your favorite? Because there's even more on the shelf, but those were the ones that you were
Mm.
starting with.
I
What's your
have to say like Twelfth Night because
it's funny.
yeah,
Twelfth Night is my favorite Shakespeare comedy.
yeah,
Yeah.
really
what,
funny.
What part of it made you laugh the most?
Probably when like near the end when Viola says, "How can I ever thank you, kind stranger?" And then the sailor is like, "Stranger, that's the first thing to call the man who saved you from drowning and helped you to find your lost sister."
Oh
And it's
yeah.
like, because he thinks that
He
he's
thinks
like,
it's Sebastian.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then like, Olivia runs out, and then she thinks Sebastian is, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Ceresio?
Oh, Cesario.
Cesario,
Yeah.
okay. And then Sebastian is like, "Oh no, wait, I'll actually marry you." And then like the Duke marries.
Okay, look, if some hot rich chick runs out at you and you're broke and she's like, "Come marry me and live in my castle." I mean, who's gonna say no to that, right?
I need to know the person first, because I don't go running off with random strangers who want to kiss me.
Okay, I've trained her well. But if it's a
No, you
Shakespeare,
haven't trained me.
if
I
it's a
did that by
Shakespeare
myself.
comedy. Anyway. Okay.
It's all
But yeah,
for
so those are fantastic. We'll drop a link to those. Those are books that, oh gosh, I've really come to love them. And they're nice because kids can get through them pretty quickly. And because they have been turned into modern prose, so it makes it a lot easier to understand. So yes, so this year's theme is going to be Shakespeare, and we're going to be diving into all kinds of awesome 90s goodness. And I hope you enjoy that. The next thing that I wanted to talk about was I had a couple of letters that I wanted to share. One came in from Erin Tracy, who is the host of a new podcast called The Secret World of Roald Dahl. And this is not a paid plug. I listened to the first 2 episodes of the show, and I thought this show was really interesting. I'm a huge fan of Roald Dahl, and I'm interested in all kinds of perspectives on him. And this one so far appears to be pretty measured. They're not afraid to be critical of him because he was an incredibly complicated guy. So if you're interested in a new podcast, it's called The Secret World of Roald Dahl. and the host is Erin Tracy. And you can find that on all the major podcast networks. I'll drop a link for that in the notes for this later. And I will be reviewing it. So far, I'm interested and I want to see where it goes. So I'll give it a review and tell you what I think of that. And I'd also like to know what you think of it. I also got a letter from Gerard de Souza, who wrote in and said, "What do you think about children's picture books that are written by celebrities? I always appreciate publishers that need to make money, but it always struck me as a blatant cash grab." And then he goes on to talk about the comedian Jack D, who was on a video joking about how it only takes him 20 minutes to write his children's books. And kind of where I'm at with that was on a video joking about how it only takes him 20 minutes to write his children's books. And kind of where I'm at with that is that, like, look, I believe in free expression. And if someone wants to pretend to write a children's book and they come up with a treatment, and then usually what happens when a celebrity writes a children's book is, either the celebrity's approached by a publishing house or vice versa. And then they get actual writers to kind of clean it up and put it together. And then it's really published more with the celebrity author as a brand. That's not always the case. Sometimes a celebrity author does actually try to write the book, but usually it's more just like they're using the celebrity to market a book as opposed to actually write it properly. They're free to write it and we're free to buy it or not. I generally have found these books not to be fantastic quality. I don't think they're typically very interesting. That doesn't mean I think the people who write them are bad people. And you never know, like, what might make a kid get interested in reading. Like Shohei Ohtani is putting out a children's book right now that's about his dog
Is he?
Decoy. Ohtani is putting out a children's book right now that's about his dog
Is he?
Decoy. Yeah. So Shohei Ohtani, we worship the Dodgers in this house. Go blue, right?
Should I go grab my Dodgers card?
Oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. They believe us. I definitely post enough on social media about how much I love the Dodgers. Like, let me ask you this. Would you be interested in reading Shohei Ohtani's book? Well, the book, it's got another author under, given that Shohei Ohtani has only very recently learned to speak English. Like, he only recently gave his first press conference speaking English, which is amazing. Learning English as an adult is extremely difficult. His native language is Japanese. I respect the heck out of that, but it's hardly likely that he's got a level of English proficiency to write a children's book in
He
English.
could write it in Japanese.
He could.
Put it through Google Translate.
Well, or
and then translate it into English and then copy and link it onto a Google Docs.
But what I'm saying is it's highly likely that a lot of other people probably did most of the work for him, right?
True.
So maybe you'd read it, maybe not. Like, do I consider these books to be high art? No. Am I going to bother to review any of them? Also, no, because they've got a massive marketing budget and they definitely don't need someone like me talking about it. So it's like, kind of how I feel about it is
you're good about talking with books because you're a book nerd.
Oh, well, sure. But if I'm going to like give someone's book a boost, I do not need to boost someone who's already a multimillionaire and already has the ability to reach whoever they want. So like they're free to write their books and I'm free to generally be indifferent to them. And if you like them, I will not stop you. So thanks for writing in, Gerard. And that's kind of where I'm at.
Random, can we talk about the graveyard book?
Oh, well, we'll talk about that next time because I haven't read it yet. She started reading a book she's really excited about, so we'll have to do an episode on.
Oh, can we also talk about Iqbal?
Maybe later.
Yay.
Maybe later. Yeah, let's see. Dirt Poor Robins, my favorite band, has at least one Shakespeare reference per album. Thanks, Bazemore. I will look that up.
Bazemore.
Okay.
I think
the next thing
we're
going to talk about
every live stream.
You have. Thanks for tuning in. Bazemore's been one of our good supporters, and I appreciate that.
Well,
Thank
good
you.
job, Bazemore.
The next thing I wanted to get to is we're going to talk about the book club. The book club. So the first book club that I've tried to run through this. So some of this will be an experiment, and the title will be. Do you remember?
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm by George Orwell.
With the bear.
There's no bears in Animal Farm, but you can bring your bear if you want. So the reason why I picked that one is that the film adaptation is coming out at the beginning of May. Unfortunately, it does not look very good.
Wait, it's coming out in May?
Yeah.
My birthday month.
Yeah, there you go. Well, don't worry. Other good stuff is happening in May. I don't think the movie's going to be very good, but I think it's a good excuse to revisit the book, which is fantastic. And unfortunately, George Orwell's writing is sadly relevant through all times. I wish for a world in which Orwell is not relevant, but we have yet to reach that time. So we might as well enjoy his writing. And what we'll do is I'm going to start that in March. So I'm going to divide the book up evenly in March and April over 8 weeks. And then on Sundays, so we'll do the Saturday night live stream. And then on Sundays, we'll do the book club. So we'll have it at the same time. So for me, it'll be Sunday evening. And if you're in the US, it'll be Sunday afternoon. If you're in Europe, it'll be Sunday night, but not too late. And I know that there are some of you who tune in from farther afield. Unfortunately, this is the time that works for the most of us. So we'll have to do that. But yeah, so you'll see more about that. But just plan on the first Sunday in March. And then what will happen is on Tuesdays, you will be getting a video on my storytelling channel with the chapters that we'll be covering. So you'll have a couple of days to listen to that, enjoy it, or you can read it on your own, whatever you prefer. And then on Sunday, we'll discuss it and we'll have a good time talking about Animal Farm. And then after the movie comes out, we can all have a postmortem. And if it's good, we'll praise it. And if it's terrible, we'll rip it to shreds.
If it's terrible, can we write the name of it on a piece of paper and then burn it in the fireplace?
Sure, why not?
All
All right,
New
so
tradition.
I had done a couple of episodes where recently in my series on Little Red Riding Hood tales, and thanks for those of you who tuned into those and left comments. The first Little Red Riding Hood story was from over 1,000 years ago and was this really cool poem about a girl who gets a red tunic when she's baptized and it protects her from wolves. And then
How?
like so um later you had the Charles Perrault version of Little Red Riding Hood, which was the sad ending where she just gets eaten, right? And then you get the Brothers Grimm, which has two endings, both of which are happy. The first one where the the grandmother and Little Red Riding Hood are gobbled up, and then the wolf gets split open.
Chainsaw?
No, it's actually with a pair of scissors. So it's funny because they say a knife in a lot of modern translations, but it's a pair of scissors in the original text. And then the other one, which we like even better, huh? Where you get the home security sausage water that the grandmother boils.
I
And
remember we had to speak German when we did that little clip.
yeah, well, we've got something fun. We've got something
What
fun
did you
planned on that.
say?
Oh, no, we've got a fun skit that we haven't put out yet on that, but we've got something fun planned where, you had to speak a little bit of German.
Well, I'm
Anyway,
learning German.
so the thing that I wanted to do to sort of wrap up my series on Little Red Riding Hood was have a chat here with Chloe about like violence in fairy tales. If you go back and when we've read these early tales, they're pretty violent, right?
True.
Yeah. So like, did you find that confusing or upsetting?
No.
No? It didn't. Yeah, okay.
I've read all three Hunger Games books 50 times and listened to the audiobooks about 108 times.
Okay.
I'm fine.
All right.
I've also watched Traitors.
Well, there you go. Okay,
But
so
that has nothing to do with violence. Unless if you count dangling out of a helicopter and trying to drop a bag of gold into a ring of fire.
oh, well, we'll read Lord of the Rings at some point.
What? How does this link to
Oh,
Lord of the Rings?
you drop gold into fire in Lord of the Rings, but I won't spoil it too much. Anyway, so a lot of it's funny because you look at a lot of like modern picture books of fairy tales, and they've all been very cleaned up and sanitized. And I kind of enjoy the ones that are more, I don't know, I guess I like the ones that are violent. I always did, even when I was a kid. And I didn't like the ones that it was funny when I was a kid, we would joke and call it the American ending, where everyone's happy and everyone does fine and nothing bad happens and there isn't a cost to anything. And I don't know, I sort of like the fairy tales where things have a cost and they are violent and they are dangerous. So I thought that I would end the series with my own modest contribution. So this is the if it wasn't raining right now, you'd be getting this as a fireside fairy tale. But right now, you're getting it
Is
as
it
a
raining?
yeah, it's been well on and off. We're having one of those English weather evenings. Anyway, so you're getting a fairy tale in my filthy living room, which I didn't bother cleaning because why? And this is my own contribution. And what I thought is, what if we could take the older, more violent Little Red Riding Hood story and maybe turn it into sort of an Americana type tale? And Chloe and I have done this before. We wrote our own Cinderella story a few years ago and called it Cindy Feller, an Old West Fairy Tale. And you can find that on Amazon if you feel like it.
Mummy, it
Yes.
got rated out of 10.
Oh, well, that's weird. Okay. Okay. This one I've called Little Redhead, a Hillbilly Fairy Tale. So to wrap up this evening, please everyone get very comfortable and maybe shake the dust off your boots and get ready.
What if we
And
don't have boots on?
I'll be reading this in dialect, and the dialect that I will be adopting is that of my grandmother, who's been passed away for some time now. She was born in Kansas and died in Missouri, and so as I'm reading this, imagine that's where I've gotten this dialect from. Is this the dialect that I grew up hearing? T'other day I saw that nice little girl Bridget, who lives in the yeller farmhouse just past my cousin Skeeter's place, and I remembered how maybe last summer or the summer before she had a close shave with a nasty varmint. Bridget is just the purtiest little thing you ever did see, with red ringlets, bright blue eyes, and feisty freckles. Her mam and pap just love her to bits, and her mama and papa spoil her rotten. Her softball team's color is red, so her mama got her a whole mess of red hats, a beanie, a baseball cap, a visor, a trucker hat, a cowgirl hat, and even a tiara for when she was feeling fancy. Bridget never went nowhere without one of them hats, so pretty soon everybody in town started calling her Little Redhead. After all, even when she don't have one of her hats on, her head is still red. Anyhow, of a morning her mama hollered, "Little Redhead, get yourself on into the kitchen." And after her mama called her 3 or 4 times, she finally come. "Now, darling," said her mama, "here's a cooler with some pecan pie and a jug of sweet tea. I need you to take this round to your mama, 'cause she is bad sick and needs to be cheered up. Mind your manners and tell her I said howdy. Go straight there and no lollygagging on the way, or you'll trip and break your neck. Or worse, you'll break the jug and then your poor mama won't get a sip of sweet tea." Little Redhead promised not to act a fool and hit the trail. Her mama lived way back in the holler, about half an hour's walk from the farm. Little Redhead trotted along, making sure not to wander off the road. She was just passing Uncle Abner's place near the crossroads when she heard something rustling in the bushes. And that was when she saw that nasty old wolf pop its big, shaggy head out. And that wolf started talking. "Howdy, Little Redhead," said the wolf. Little Redhead suspected she was in a tight spot. She knew that wolves is wicked, especially talking wolves, but she didn't let her feathers get ruffled. Just yonder in the fields, at least 20 rednecks was out plowing and planting corn. One holler from Little Redhead, and all them fellers would come running and skin that wolf alive. That was why the wolf wouldn't come out of them bushes. Little Redhead figured if she played dumb, she just might get herself out of this fix. "Thank you kindly, Wolf," said Little Redhead. "Why are you out and about so early?" "I'm going to see Mamaw." "What you got there under that checkered cloth?" "Mamaw's laid up, so I'm bringing her pecan pie and sweet tea we baked yesterday, and it'll help her get fit as a fiddle in no time." "Little Redhead, where does your Mamaw live?" "Copper Pot. I bet you know the place," said Little Redhead. Now, you might think this youngin' was being entirely too chatty when it came to telling strangers where her people lived and where moonshiners kept their pots still. And you'd be right if she hadn't been fibbing to that rotten old wolf to throw him off the scent. You best believe Little Redhead don't got all them hats just for fun. She needs them to hold all the brains she's got. That rascally old wolf didn't suspect a thing and thought to himself, "That little girl and her granny'll taste gooder'n grits, if only I can get hold of 'em." "Listen up, Little Redhead," said the wolf. "Y'all need to look yonder at all them purty flowers growing everywhere. Y'all need to listen to the warblers singing in the trees. You are clumping along as miserably as if you were on your way to school instead of having a nice stroll through these mighty fine woods." Little Redhead had a look round and said, "Bless my soul, how fine the sunshine looks, all a breaking through the trees. And would you just look at all the purty little flowers growing around? Golly, if I pick a bunch for Mama, she'll be tickled pink." "Darn tootin'," said the wolf. "That's enough jabber-jawing with me. Let you get to it." And that low down varmint of a wolf scampered off toward the crick. And as soon as he was gone, right quick, Little Redhead run off through a cut through straight up the holler to Mama's house. Her heart was thumping, and she was all out of breath because she knew that she was in a big ol' mess. She run past the old tire swing, past the broken down truck, and right up the porch steps and knocked on the screen door. "Who's there?" Mama called out from the kitchen. "It's me, Little Redhead," hollered Little Redhead with her voice all shook. "I brung you pecan pie and sweet tea." Mama's hearing ain't what it used to be for a while now, so even if it had been the wolf himself, she would have let him in. She hollered back, "The door ain't locked. Come on in and set a spell." Little Redhead scrambled on into the house and shut the front door hard behind her. "Mama, there's a wolf out there," the little girl shouted. Ordinarily, Little Redhead would have gotten a talking to about slamming the door and using her outside voice inside, but Mama could see the young'un was wore to a frazzle. So she put down the sweet potato she was peeling, wiped her hands on her apron, and went to the window. Outside along the tree line, she saw that wolf, who had figured out right quick that he'd been tricked and sniffed out Little Redhead's trail till he found where she'd run off to. He was slinking around in the azaleas, thinking on his next move. "Little Redhead," Mamaw said, without taking her eyes off of that rotten old wolf, "go and tell Papaw to open up the safe and fetch me my favorite Springfield rifle and a box of them 30-06 cartridges." "Yes, ma'am," said Little Redhead. "Oh, and pumpkin?" "Yes, ma'am." "Bring me my glasses, too. I think I left 'em with my knitting by the rocking chair." "Yes, ma'am," said Little Redhead. Well, Papa unlocked the safe right quick, and soon enough Mama had her favorite Springfield rifle trained on that there wolf. The wolf saw that he was about to be humanely dispatched with a high caliber ball of lead, and Mama only got one crack at him before he loped off into the woods. "Butter my biscuits," Mama grumbled. "I only managed to nip his backside. I ain't what I used to be." "You're still the crack shot that won a blue ribbon and my heart at the county fair," Papaw said. "Hank McCormick, you are smoother than pumpkin pie," Mamaw said, grinning in spite of herself. "Now load me up the double barrel with buckshot, won't you, sweetheart?" Papaw got to work checking each item in the arsenal, and Little Redhead watched with great interest. "Which one do I get?" she asked. "This is a proper fight, so us grown folks'll handle it," said Papaw. Little Redhead scowled and folded her arms. "Y'all never let me have any fun," she muttered. "This ain't fun, darling. It's home defense," said Mamaw gently. "But I tell you what, you can help us out quite a lot by helping Papaw lock up. That rotten old skunk of a wolf will be back, and we need to be ready for him." Mamaw loaded the shotguns with buckshot while Papaw and Little Redhead went around the house and locked up all the storm shutters. Then Mamaw and Papaw stood guard while Little Redhead rounded up the chickens, who were madder than wet hens about having to go into the hen house so early. The old cow, the pigs, and the horses went into the barn a bit more willingly because Papaw tempted them with some sweet hay and oats. "Little Redhead, bar the door," Papaw said in a kindly way. Little Redhead put a big oak bar over the barn doors, and Mamaw snapped on big iron locks to keep it in place. Now that wolf could bash himself against the barn all night and never get in. At last they were all lucked up good, so they bought 6 or 7 loads in by the fireplace, all the time keeping their eyes on the tree line at the edge of their land. There was no sign of the wolf. For now. That evening, Papaw and Mamaw and Little Redhead and the dogs was comfy cozy inside the house eating sweet potatoes and chicken and dumplings. But all the same, things couldn't feel right. Somebody always had to be watching at the windows and listen out for that ugly old wolf because they knew he'd be back. That wolf was spitting mad. He spent the afternoon in the woods rolling around under a laurel bush and moaning, for his tail was powerful sore where Mamaw had nipped him with the 30-06. The wolf was mighty proud of his tail, and now it drooped funny and seemed like it would never be right again. The wolf also hadn't had a bite to eat for 3 days, and when critters is starving, they do some pretty crazy things. So after a while, when he had bandaged up his tail with birch bark and come slinking back toward the house, he didn't even think about trying to get into the barn or the hen house. All he could think about was how he wanted to gobble up little Redhead and her mamaw and her papaw, even if they busted his gut. The dogs sat right up when they heard the wolf on the porch, and Papaw stepped in front of little Redhead. The wolf come up on the porch and pounded the door with his big ugly paw. "Open up, Mamaw," the wolf said in a right sorry imitation of a little girl. "It's me, little Redhead." "Liar, liar, pants on fire," shouted little Redhead. "Well, shoot," said the wolf. "This is private property. State your business or be gone," hollered Papaw through the door. "I'm here for that young'un," the wolf growled, "and the rest of you if you stand in my way." "Oh, you don't want little Redhead," Papaw chuckled. "She'd taste powerful rotten, as I don't think she's had a bath for at least a month." "2 months!" shouted little Redhead. "You ought to be ashamed of yourself, tromping up to decent folks' houses and having a hissy fit on the porch," Mamaw scolded. "Now go on and git. This is your last warning." They heard the wolf roar a mighty roar. Then there was a fearsome scratching sound and a thump from up above. "That wolf is on the roof," little Redhead whispered. "I know it," Mamaw said. "Little Redhead, throw a few more logs on the fire." Mamaw had saved all the drippings and bones from the chicken. She put them into her great big cooking pot with a few buckets of water, then set that pot to boil in the fireplace. "You gonna drive that wolf crazy with that smell going up the chimbley," Papaw said. "That is my intent. I aim to whoop this wolf with his own belly," said Mamaw. Well, the smell of the roast chicken went up the chimbley and into the nose of that nasty varmint, and his tummy rumbled so hard that the house shook like there was an earthquake. And directly that wolf was out of his mind with hunger. He leaped up onto the chimbley and started to climb down. At first, little Redhead was scared to bits, but as her papaw promised, the grown folks knew a thing or two about home defense. Mamaw and Papaw sneaked up to the fireplace. Papaw had his hatchet ready, and Mamaw pointed her double barrel up the chimbley. That wolf scrambled and scratched as he come down, but Mamaw waited and waited. And just as the wolf was about to get in the room, she fired. A blast of buckshot went right into that rotten old wolf, and his claws slipped off the walls of the chimney, and he splashed face down into Mamaw's boiling pot. This was not a purty way to go, but I think we can all agree that the wolf didn't get anything that he hadn't asked for. Everybody in the county was much obliged to Mamaw and Papaw, as that awful old wolf had caused trouble for more folks than you can shake a stick at. The only downside was that the house stunk of boiled wolf for at least a week, so Mamaw and Papaw went and stayed at Little Redhead's house till the smell cleared out. But that suited Little Redhead just fine, because she knew she couldn't be more safe and sound than when she was with her Mamaw and Papaw. From then on, whenever Little Redhead or one of her brothers or sisters acted a fool, her mama would remind them about that bad old wolf and how young'uns can end up in a world of hurt if they don't have a lick of common sense. And then Little Redhead would own that truly, when it comes to dealing with a nasty, sneaky, low-down, rotten old wolf, some quick thinking and an angry Mamaw holding a double barrel loaded with buckshot will indeed save your skin.
Hey!
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. That's my own modest contribution to the Little Red Riding Hood tradition. I would be interested if any of you come up with your own that suit, some other cultural circumstance, maybe your own background, maybe another historical background. But that's how I imagined the Brothers Grimm version of Little Red Riding Hood if it had happened in hillbilly country in the US maybe 100 years ago. So, yeah, do we have any questions to clean up on
Um,
before we go?
I don't see any questions. If anyone has any questions, please let us know. Oh, gosh darn it said fantastic. Well done.
Oh,
Thank you.
well, thank you.
Uh, excuse me. Ugh. And M. Gabriel says I'm in Missouri right now.
Missouri?
Missouri.
All right.
Missouri.
Unfortunately, Chloe's never been to Missouri. It would be nice to take her one day.
Mhm. Oh, and Bazemore said the version I remember involves the wolf ending the story with a belly full of rocks.
Yes, so there are two versions, as you would have seen in the Fireside Fairy Tale that I did of that. So that's an interesting one because when the Brothers Grimm recorded these stories, they usually didn't include sometimes, but usually they would just write down the story and then that would be it. This one they included two endings. So the first version of the story, which is a little bit more elaborate, is the one where the huntsman hears the granny snoring and you get to hear the lovely German word schnarchen. So
Schnarchen.
yeah, it's such a good word. It's so fun to say. So he hears her snoring and he's like, man, that old lady's like really snoring. Like I'm going to go check on her. So good for the huntsman. And then so he goes in, splits the wolf's belly, and then he gets Little Red Riding Hood and the grandmother out. And then they fill the wolf with stones. And then it doesn't actually say it in the text, but presumably they would have sewn him back up or something. I don't know. And then he wakes up and is very alarmed and tries to run away and falls down dead because he's full of giant rocks. That one's fun, and I do like that one. Like I said before, I really appreciate that one because that story shows the difference between a good man and a bad man. The wolf's obviously a bad man, and the huntsman is a good man, and they both use their powers quite differently. And then there's the second version they put in the story where the grandmother boils sausage water and then the wolf climbs in the chimney or chimbly, as they said in Missouri or Missouri, as my grandma would say. And he falls down in the water. So that's the one that I adapted for my version because I thought it was more funny. Yeah.
All right. So M. Gabriel said I think 1903 Springfields were only surplus after World War II. They also said, "Oh, I liked
World War
that."
One. World War One. They yeah, the Springfields were surplus after. I did check this with my dad because he knows enough about this sort of thing, and I made sure that they were cartridges. But yeah, no, but you're right. They were surplus.
Yeah, and they also said, "Oh, I like that. Thanks." And then Ray and Katz said, "I'm also in Missouri."
Oh, fantastic! All right. Okay. Well, I hope that I did credit to an older style Kansas Missouri accent. So my grandmother was born in Kansas, but then moved to Missouri pretty early on. But she lived in a little town called Maitland, which is just outside St. Joe. So this would be the west side of Missouri, as opposed to say down by Arkansas or something like that. But yeah, it's a beautiful part of the country, and it's one I haven't been to in years. She died quite a while ago, so I haven't had an excuse to go back. But it's a very nice place. So very happy to see
So,
some
were
Missouri folk.
you were telling me in the car earlier about what you were going to say today?
Well, yeah, we just said everything we were going to say today. So, yeah. Do we have any other questions or comments
Uh,
or
Ray and oh, so M. Gabriel said, "Thank you both. That was fun." And then Ray and Katz said, "A different wolf and the Three Little Pigs, I presume."
I don't well, I mean, so The Three Little Pigs is an English story.
It has like 15 different endings. There's like where all the pigs survive, all the pigs die, two pigs
Mhm.
die, and one pig survives.
Well,
Like
that's the modern
I think
influence.
I think someone's made a like brick of a book that has all the
All the Three Little Pigs. Well, but that's the thing is like you do these modern versions of the story. So in the older versions of the Three Little Pigs, the first two pigs get eaten. And then later on, they decided that was too traumatizing or whatever for kids, and it's like, I don't know, I mean, I'm not a psychologist, I don't this is just sort of a very casual theory on my part, but I don't think you can chalk it up to one thing, but you hear constantly how kids are so anxious these days and that, resilience is a
That's
really big
because they're
problem.
sat staring at screens and not doing anything with actual
No,
humans.
I agree, and that's, yeah, that's why generally in our house we have pretty limited screen time. Like that's why you get so excited about doing this. Like we watch some movies and things, but my kids don't have unlimited access to screens,
I
but
listen to music.
music is unlimited. But I also wonder if like I don't know, tell me some of your theories because this is a chicken and egg thing. Did we write less violent versions of fairy tales because we became less resilient, or by writing less violent versions of fairy tales, do we sap that resilience? Like, do we become less resilient because, maybe the people publishing these versions, these ones that are stripped of their violence and wildness and scariness, are they showing that they just don't trust kids? Like that, what you can't handle this, it's too much for you, it's too much reality. Like I think obviously you have to know your own child, you have to know what they're able to deal with, but for the most part, kids understand what fiction is and they like to go into that fictional world and be scared a little bit because they know at the end of the day they're in their bedroom, they're in their family room and they're safe and they're fine. So if anything, by reading these more violent, scary, weird, and wild fairy tales to your kids, I think it actually helps them build resilience and be less anxious because it tells them, like, look, if you can survive this, you can probably survive something else. But if you say, oh no, you're so sensitive and precious that you can't even handle a little pig getting gobbled up by a fictional wolf, like, what does that say about your kid's ability to handle real life challenges? What do you think about that? Do you, like
Mm,
you are an absolute fanatic of the Hunger Games. That is
yeah.
an unbelievably violent book series.
Is it?
Yeah. There's like straight up like all kinds of mayhem happening in those
There's
books.
only people being gruesomely killed.
Yeah, and have you ever had a nightmare about it? Not real.
No.
Exactly, because you know it's not real, right?
Um, Me and my friends play it.
Yeah.
I play it on Roblox as
Well,
well.
there you go.
And I won 5 times already.
It's true.
Yeah.
So, oh, here we go. I need to write that with my three little kittens and a pack of coyotes. Oh, that would be funny. Kind of a take on the three little pigs, but yeah, the three little kittens. I will say, having grown up in Los Angeles, coyotes are no joke. There are not stray cats in Los Angeles because they are chicken McNuggets to the
Chicken
roving,
McNuggets.
marauding bands of coyotes. And then, see, we've got down here, M. Gabriel mentioning Charlotte's Web traumatized me. Do you remember what happened when I first read you Charlotte's Web and we got to the ending?
No.
Okay, she was only 5 years old. And granted, this was during lockdown, so it was a very emotional, isolating time. We got to the end of Charlotte's Web and she just broke down, and I had to sit in the rocking chair and just hold her for about half an hour. You were 5. You were 5. Please, I still cry when I read Charlotte's Web.
Goodbye.
Okay, the hardest hitting words in Charlotte's Web, and this is where E.B. White was so
Goodbye.
okay. Have I embarrassed you? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, I've embarrassed my daughter. Don't worry. Okay, I'm about to embarrass myself here. So the words E.B. White knew what he was doing. These words hit like a punch. No one was with her when she died. Every single one, single syllable. Boom, 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 boom. They hit so hard. Charlotte gives everything to Wilbur, and no one was with her when she died. Hardest hitting sentence that I've ever read in literature. Every time I read that book, it's
You are too soft.
no, no, I love it because it's so real and it just like yeah, it's so good.
All right,
So
hold on.
good.
Let me find the book and make you
Okay,
read that
so we've got
sentence.
a comment here from Ray and Katz. So much worry about trauma, not that trauma isn't real, but we have to learn to deal with it. You're totally right. And I think the problem that we've gotten into is that somehow people have gotten to a place where they rank all trauma as equally overwhelming, whereas the reality is there are some traumas that of course they're overwhelming and of course they're going to take a long time to get over. You might need help getting over it, but there's an entire spectrum beyond that. There's like stubbing your toe, there's having a bad day, there's, you order some food and they mixed up the order and so you're a little bit disappointed. There's a whole spectrum, but like we have to be able to differentiate between those things. And an exciting story to me should not rank as trauma if it's not your cup of tea. It's not your cup of tea. But yeah, like if two of the three little pigs get eaten and that leaves you literally traumatized, maybe that's something you should work on in whatever way makes sense to you. But I don't see why other children shouldn't read that. But yeah, I don't know. It's kind of an interesting one to talk about. Things are traumatic. I'm Gabriel. Things are traumatic. Deal. Yeah, and for the most part, yeah. Like a guy I grew up with when I was a kid. He was the dad of one of my friends. All the time, he used to say, "Life is hard, and then you die." And his kids would just be like, "Dad, you know." It's it's kind of true, you know. We got to get over the hard stuff because if you spend all your time dwelling on the hard stuff, you're never going to be able to enjoy the good stuff. So when something does actually mess you up, when something is really hard, of course, you're going to need to do what it takes to deal with that. But yeah. Anyway. Okay, well we are coming up definitely on Chloe's bedtime here. So, I look forward to many more discussions with all of you about horrifically traumatizing children's literature and how we all cried over Charlotte. That might be another one we should do for a book club.
No.
Maybe that's one we'll do after Animal Farm is Charlotte's Web, and then we can all get to where Charlotte dies and just together. Let me know if you think that would be a good
You
idea.
are so weird.
Of course I'm weird. I'm your
Once-
mom. If you don't think I'm weird, that's not very normal.
No, this is kind of weird. Once there was a spider in my room, I named it Charlotte, and then it died.
Well, yeah,
I was sad.
yeah. The spiders here only live through the summer.
She
So.
wasn't bad company.
No, she killed flies for you. Yeah, just like the real Charlotte.
And then I put my little like teddy pig thingy next to it.
Okay.
And then she crawled in it,
Well,
and I never touched the pig again.
you can mourn Charlotte tonight.
I don't like mourning people. But I didn't really know.
Well, thanks to all of you for tuning in, and we will be back next Saturday at the same time. I'll put out the topic on Monday, and I look forward to hearing from all of you in the future. In the meantime, in the comments, tell me the most traumatizing fairy tale or folk tale that you ever read and why you think it's better if it's scary and violent. And yeah, and if any of you decide to have a go at Little Red Riding Hood and rewriting it in your own way or another fairy tale, let me know. If it's good, we'll read it out on the show.
Also, Team Peter, Team Gale. Peter. It's Peter.
I'm team neither. I'm team neither.
You just said 2 days ago that you were
I'm
Team Gale
Finnick
or
O'Dare.
Team
Okay.
Finnick.
We'll have a debate about Hunger Games another day. How about that? Should we have a big old Hunger Games debate one night? Just smack down you and me? Okay. All right. We've got a whole list of fun things then for the coming year. And we look forward to sharing it all with you. And as always,
thanks for listening with the teddy bear and me.